jelly beans! How's it brewing? Welcome to the first ever BunnieDIY Spoopy Edition. Now, I know it's spooky, S-P-O-O-K-Y, but my husband showed me the funniest thing for a Halloween decoration called Spoopy, and I died. And Spoopy, if you're wondering, is something that is spooky, or is supposed to be spooky, but it's super cute. Like, this background is the perfect example. Like, these little pumpkins and these little kitties are supposed to be scary, creepy, but they're so kawaii and spoopy. Spoopy. It cracks me up every time. So I thought it would be so much fun to do Halloween crafts all throughout October, but make them kind of spoopy. The spoopy craft for this week is something you may have seen before. If you're familiar with the YouTuber Mariah Elizabeth, who I will show you right here, she became very well known for her squishy makeovers. So, this is a squishy. And so I thought, what better way to celebrate the month of Halloween than to repaint some squishies into more spooky or spoopy theme. I have 3 squishies here that I'm going to, attempt to give a makeover to, or attempt to repaint. When I play with squishies, I don't just sit and do this. I tend to rip them apart. I always have to keep my hands busy, so if I'm not working on a craft, I'm sitting playing with a squishy, and I end up massacring them. Like this poor unicorn. You've heard of the Headless Horseman, but have you heard of the Headless Horse? First up is this little guy. He may look familiar to some of you, because I think he looks like Tubbs from Neko Itsume. So I'd be interested to see if you guys recognize him or not. I think I also used to use it as a finger puppet for my daughter, which is why it has this big rip. But as you can see, there's plenty of holes all over. And paint? Or is that sauce? That's probably spaghetti sauce. And the paint's coming off of his ears, and it's ripping off. And his neck is cracking really bad. And a hole here. I'm going to be using my best friend Fabri-Tac to glue everything together. I squeezed it all over the inside of the squishy, and then held it together with rubber bands. Just to be on the safe side, I let this sit for about 30 minutes to an hour. Then I came in with my slick type fabric paint. Wait, I forgot something super important. I need to sand him first. Ugh. Okay, be right back. This squishy is super smooth and soft, so before I paint it, I need to sand it a little bit to sort of rough it up. That way the paint will stick. I learned the hard way, but make sure you wear a mask for this. I didn't because I didn't think it'd be that bad, but oh my god, I was coughing for days and my throat was super sore. So just be careful. Okay, I also cut off the little muzzle because I want it to be flat. And I finally went back in with my fabric paint and filled in all the air holes, sealed all the seams, and covered up the muzzle and the hole by the eye. Then I let that dry for about a day. Puffy paint takes forever to dry, so I really wanted to make sure it was good to go before I moved on. Then one last step of prep is to paint the entire squishy in plain white paint. This is optional, I think, but I like to have a blank slate to work from. So I gave the front 2 coats, let it dry, then did the back the same way. Now this squishy is going to be a little kid in their Halloween costume. I decided to sketch it out in pencil before I start painting. Can anyone guess what this little guy's dressed up as? Keep thinking about it. To start, I mixed up a really nice skin color, and I added it to the middle circle for the face. I also left the mouth and 2 smaller triangles blank, because I know I'm going to leave those white. This took about 2 coats, I think, and I let it dry completely between coats. I mixed up a really light tan color and began painting that really carefully around the face and onto the belly and feet. This is some sort of new fabric paint I haven't seen before. I got it at Michael's and I kind of wonder if it's their store brand. But I let it dry for the day and came back to a bunch of drips and spills. So obviously this paint is super liquidy. After the face and tan color are dry, I painted the rest of the squishy. I mixed up a really beautiful forest green color using a million different paints. I used blues, greens, and a tiny bit of brown and yellow. I tried painting it on with a brush, but the paint was way too thick, and it would just kind of spread around instead of painting. So I used some cocktail sticks and popsicle sticks to kind of spread the paint on, kind of like frosting a cake. I coated both sides in the green paint, letting each side dry for about a day in between. Alright, any more guesses as to what this costume is? I'll give you a hint. It's a Pokemon. You have to play a flute to wake it up. It's Snorlax! I have a love-hate relationship with Snorlax. Like, I love having him in my team, but I have nightmares about when I went up against Red Snorlax in Heart Gold and I kept freaking dying. Oh my god. Then I added the final details to the face. I gave the little girl some purple eyes and a huge toothy smile. She's just so freaking happy to be dressed as a giant Snorlax. I also added the lines for Snorlax's eyes, and finally some eye shines. The last step is to gently stab the squishy with a pin, like a demented voodoo doll. Well, aren't all voodoo dolls demented? Anyway, the paint created a thick barrier so that the air can't escape. So by poking holes everywhere, it helps the air escape and allows the squishy to be a squishy. Don't worry, the holes won't show up. And this squishy is all done! This was my first ever squishy repaint, and I am absolutely in love. I'm so happy with how everything came out. I'm really envious of this little girl and her awesome costume. I hope she gets lots of candy. The next squishy to work on is probably the hardest. Or the worst off. It's gonna need the most patch jobs. This poor cat has seen better days. Oh my goodness. This body is falling apart everywhere. And cracking. And the head and the ear. And there's a big hole in the top too. And there's a lot of seams. Everything on this guy is just absolutely falling apart. Just like Snorlax, I glued him all back together with my Fabri-Tac. And in this case, I did the head and the body separate, and then when those were dry, I glued them together. Once all of that's dry, I trimmed off the seams. And then I decided that the tail and the back just was not defined enough, so I carefully trimmed away the foam around the tail. I actually thought it'd be cute if the head was sort of cocked at an angle. Like, if you have cats, you know they're always looking at you sideways in judgment. So I trimmed off a little from the body and glued the head on. Then held it together with rubber bands and let it sit to dry. Then I covered that up with some slick paint as well as all the seams. And I covered him in white paint starting with the head and then the body. Next, I gave this kitty 2 coats of matte black fabric paint and then a thin coat of this gorgeous purple glitter fabric paint. This is going to be a witch's kitty, so he has to be sparkly. Once the glitter's all dry, I added some white accents to the parts of the cat that are going to be lighter colors, like the paws, tail, muzzle, eyes, ears, and chest. Then I added a really nice purple color to the paws, chest, and tail, light pink to the inside of the ears and nose, and white for the little mouth. And a green gradient for the eyes. I started with a light green oval, then a smaller darker green, then a dark forest green pupil. And finally, I added a light gray outline to the eyes. This kitty doesn't really sit up well on his own. I think by making the head sideways, I messed up the center of balance. Oopsie daisy. But I really love this cat. Because the patch job was so insane, I wanted to keep him pretty simple. I do kind of wish I had added a little tooth or something. I think I may add a little hat or a bow down the line though. But he still squishes so nicely. Last but not least, we have the unicorn. This unicorn is perfectly fine now, but bleh, it has some serious issues. And the horn. There's also a couple of air bubbles and pockets that I had picked out before. Don't worry, we're gonna fix you up. Once again, I started by gluing everything back in place with fabric tack and held it together with rubber bands and left it alone to dry. Once the glue is dry, I sanded the sides as well, and I trimmed off the little seams. I added some slick type fabric paint to the seams where I had glued it before and into some of those air pockets. Then I added some detail with the puffy paint on the horn and the mane because I thought I would be accenting those later, but that didn't happen. So disregard. And before painting the design, I covered the front in 2 layers of white paint, let it dry, and then painted the back. I'm going to work on the back first. I had a sudden inspiration to make this unicorn two-faced. And this side is going to be the creepy side. I challenged myself to create a skull, so I found some anatomical horse pictures online, as well as some fantasy unicorn skulls, and sketched the design on with pencil. Then I took some black puffy paint and filled in all the spots that needed to be black. And this only took 1 coat and came out great. After the black was completely dry, I went in with my white fabric paint and carefully filled in all the other spots. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I love it so far. I'm so happy with it. Okay, now the other side. I mixed up some white with a tiny bit of purple and made this gorgeous lavender color. Then I gave this side 2 coats. I also painted the inside of her ear a really light pink. Then I used slick puffy paint in pink, yellow, blue, and purple on the mane. And a really light yellow for the horn. I gave her a really delicate black eye and added a gold spiral on the horn. I actually really like that the gold carries over to the skull side. Now here is my favorite part. I have a bunch of these fabric flowers for my dolls, but I knew they were just what this unicorn needed. So while adding the second layer of puffy paint to the mane, I also added the fabric flowers. The puffy paint acts as a perfect glue for these flowers. I let that dry for 2 whole days because I really wanted to make sure that the mane was done. Then I poked a ton of holes all over before giving her a good squeeze. Oh my god, I love her. I think she's my absolute favorite of the 3. I also realized after the fact that she is a perfect dichotomy for life and death. One side is a literal skull and representation of decay, while the other side is bright and peaceful with flowers blossoming from her hair. In both ways, she represents nature. Wait, wasn't this supposed to be a Halloween unicorn? Boo! Anyway, I hope you guys love these as much as I do, and let me know if you'd like to see more squishy repaints. I will happily make more. These were so much fun to do. Comment below which is your favorite and what their name should be. If you've ever made a squishy repaint before, I'd love to see. You can tag me on Instagram at BunnieDIY. I would love to share anything you've made on my Instagram stories. And if you liked this video and want to see more, make sure you click the subscribe button and get notified of new videos by clicking the little bell. And please give this video a like before you go. Those thumbs up really help my channel out. Next week's Spoopy craft is going to be a really cool Halloween gift idea. I'll be showing you how to make an awesome photo puzzle box. See you then! Love you a latte.